say Pleiadian, it's a huge star system complex with many
Yeah.
planets. And so
Well,
much of what
go ahead.
what we see from there, unfortunately, is mind control and programming information.
I agree. Now, but some of there are some beings that have visited here that have come from various races that could be termed Pleiadians, sort of as a bucket to put them in. But in general, what I was kind of referring to there in my question was, in other words, for example, those races, where do you fit them into this draconian empire? Because my understanding is that they are at war with dragons.
Yeah, that's correct. And, again, going back in time to the Lyrian civilization, which is where all humanity originated, which was attacked by the draconian eons ago, the refugees from the Lyrian star system fanned out and created many other colonies, including colonies in our own solar system. And this is what the Draco are against. This is what the Draco mean to attack and assimilate. And yes, there are wars going on in space. That's why it's interesting, almost humorous to me, when I hear these channeled information or these people who claim to be contactees or abductees, and they say, oh, it's so beautiful in space, and it's love, light, and peace, and their systems are so wonderful, when in fact the universe is a very dangerous place. Our planet's in a bad neighborhood.
Yes,
and it's dangerous to go outside, quite honestly. And so, there's all wars out there. There's no love, light, and peace. I'm very sorry to people who are listening. That's all la-la stuff from the New Age. It's quite the opposite in reality. Yes, of course, there are civilizations out there that are peaceful and that do mean well, but they don't interfere. They mind their own business and keep to themselves because they know that each one of us, each civilization, attracts their own experiences and is responsible for changing those experiences themselves. There's a Chinese saying that says, if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach him how to fish, you feed him for life. And so we need to teach ourselves how to fish, energetically and spiritually.
Absolutely. I do.
But hopefully, that's what I try to do with my work. When I teach language of hyperspace, when I teach the color therapies and the symbols, that's what I'm hoping to do, to help people open up the 90% of their brain they're not using and the 97% of their DNA that they're not using. Imagine what we can do if we opened up even a portion of all of that.
Okay, absolutely. Well, we talk about that a great deal. But when you're talking about the wars in space, of which we are fast becoming involved, and because of the secret space program, certain sides are being taken by certain groups of humanity. Are you able to delineate who is who in that war?
Yes, somewhat. I can tell you that the U.S. government is only in association with maybe 5 or 6 different species that, let's say, have the same agenda as they do. The Russians are involved with another particular group, especially a group from Tau Ceti is involved with the Russians.
Okay, but can you describe a little more specifically? Because my understanding is that the Army are sort of run by one group, the Navy by another, and so on. So there is some, in other words, they are maybe working together on the same agenda ultimately, but that they are run by different groups, ET groups. And can you be more specific as to which groups?
Well, I disagree with that. I don't believe, and I'm pretty much I know that the different branches of the military don't have connections to one specific group. It's a across the board kind of thing, and they associate with the group for a particular project or need at the moment, but it's certainly not stuck at that. The group from Sirius A gives technology to all of them. There's no specific branch that gets that. There's also...
And is that the Sirius A, are you calling these reptilians or the gray reptilians?
No.
Or cybernetic organisms? What?
No. This group, Sirius A, is not reptilian at all. They are very tall, humanoid. I can't say they're human, but they're humanoid. They have a great technology for mixing genetics. In fact, a lot of the hybridization programs came from Sirius A technology, as well as some Draco technology.
Okay, and those, so you're referring to the Nordics.
Well, no, because Nordics are more what you would call Pleiadian type. They're tall blondes.
All right, and Anunnaki. In other words, I'm trying to get a little more specific for people because there's a lot of jargon out there and a lot of there's a lot of use of various names of so-called ET groups, but there's no clear delineation that from people. And I'm just curious what you've seen and how you view it.
Well, I'm going to tell you. I'll make an analogy because I think analogies help people to learn. My opinion is that most people right now on the earth couldn't even tell you where Afghanistan is, or if I said point to Paraguay on a map, most people couldn't do it. So what's the point of knowing all these alien groups and where they're from and who they're connecting to when most people can't even identify state capitals and countries on this earth?
Okay, well, I don't think that that's really useful for this conversation. I mean, I appreciate that point of view, and that may be true of certain earthlings, if you want to call it that. But, at the moment, we're having a discussion in which we're actually going beyond that level. So let's address who the groups are that the U.S. are dealing with, who the groups are that the Russians are dealing with. I hear you say from Tau Ceti. But what specifically do they look like, and what are they referred to as, so that people begin to understand who they're dealing with, because people are interacting with these various races.
Yes. Well, actually, if people would take a look at my diagram, my pictures in Blue Blood, True Blood book, I have all of the main characters there with their pictures and where they're from and what they're like. The Soviets or the Russians dealt with Tau Ceti. These are about between 5 and 6 feet tall. They have very pointed type ears, almost like you'd see from Spock on Star Trek, that kind of ear. They're kind of stocky. In fact, one was captured in the Mojave Desert in 1960, I believe, 60 or 61, and interrogated and then executed.
I see. And what about the Chinese? Who do you believe they're in contact with?
Yeah, the Chinese have a lot of contacts with the Rigelians. The Rigelians are interesting because there was a time they were very human-looking, but their world had nuclear war. They were attacked. They had nuclear, and over the generations they deteriorated so that they looked very whitish gray skin. They have very round, dark-colored eyes, very sharp noses, very thin lips. They basically look like very sick human beings who have been irradiated, and they are the ones who help to create the so-called little grays. The ones who look about 4 feet tall, the wraparound black eyes, slits for nose and mouth, very skinny, long limbs, and they move very slowly. That's the typical alien being that most people see in their abduction scenarios. But I would tell people, if you took a picture of these little grays who claim to be from Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2, and you put their picture next to a human fetus, they would be almost identical. And that is because they are a created race. They take fetuses and grow them to larger proportions and then mind control them, and that's what the gray race really is. And that's why they're dying out, because they're hormonally deficient. They cannot digest food. They're completely subject to the whims of their controllers. So that's
and their controllers are the Draco.
Well, yes, but also the Rigelians, and even there are beings from Sirius A. Now, the beings from Sirius A have created a race on Vega. The Vegans look like very tall grays, and many abductees have reported these, 6 and 7 foot tall grays along with these little tiny grays. And the taller grays are from Vega, and they are created by the race of Sirius A. And they're also workers or slaves.
What is your view of the Anunnaki that are referred to by Sitchin as the Anunnaki? They are a race that supposedly had to do with originally genetically engineering the human beings here.
Yeah, they were creating slaves to work in the mines in Africa on the world that was either called, depending on the civilization, Nibiru or Marduk.
Okay, but do you believe they're still here, and do you believe that there's a group of them returning?
Well, let me explain what happened. I wrote about this in 2003. In March of 2003, the U.S. invaded Iraq. Underneath Baghdad are stargates that were connecting to Nibiru. In April 2003, the planet of Nibiru, or what Sitchin described, was blown up as it passed Jupiter by particle beam accelerator weapons. And in fact, NASA reported the large chunks of this planet flying into the sun and reported it on their webcam or sun cam, which showed these huge chunks flying into the sun. And that is why, even now, we still are getting these asteroids and pieces of rock flying into our atmosphere and flybys between the moon and the Earth. This is debris, the residue of that. I also believe that a remnant, or some of them, were rescued by this Kuiper's Belt group. So in that effect, there are some survivors, but that planet has been destroyed.
Okay, but do you believe that the Anunnaki have been ruling this Earth, and do you believe they're coming back?
No, I don't believe they were ruling this Earth. I think they were simply mining it and used it, but they did not control it.
Okay, so who do you feel has been controlling the planet?
Up until this last part of the 20th century, it was the reptilians who completely controlled everything that our civilization, our religion, our political system, until the Illuminati decided to break away from certain factions.
And you were calling this control a positive thing?
No, of course not. No control is positive. Mind control is not positive. Any control that takes away free will is not positive.
Okay, but originally you talked about the Illuminati being at war with the Dracos, and you're saying the Dracos used to run the planet and they're trying to take it back. And I mean, because where I'm just curious where you're seeing the positive side of the Draco race.
I'm not seeing any positive side of them.
Okay.
I can't see a positive. It's like saying, is there a positive side of the Nazis? It's asking me the same kind of question.
Okay, but you're saying that there's an effort to bring this planet back into the Draconian Empire,
yes.
Right? So I'm assuming the Draconian Empire would be ruled by Dracos.
Correct.
Okay. And
there are a lot of factions. A lot of beings out there want to control this planet, not just them.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
So when you're saying you're saying the Illuminati are working, in other words, we would all join the Illuminati if they were actually going to break away from the Dracos, in my view. The trouble is, I don't think that's really going to happen. So, I do understand that you're saying that there are some positive Draconian beings or Draco beings, but what I'm kind of curious, in other words, is what's your view of the sovereignty of this planet and where it should be heading, for example?
Well, that's the whole point of the work that I do. I think we should be in charge of ourselves without any outside influence or control. If we were to create the ability to take back our own minds and control our own experiences and remove the oppression or the victimization mentality that's pervasive on this planet, then all of this will not happen. Then we can remove all of these oppressors from our midst. That's what I would like to see. The Earth develop on its own, with its own mind pattern and its own connections to the God mind within, and develop independently, instead of being attacked and controlled by every force out there that has its own agenda. That's what I would like to see.
Okay, well, that's very good to hear. What is your view of the stargates and the purpose behind the stargates on the planet?
Well, that's, again, a question that needs to be delineated, because the original stargates that were put here a long time ago by alien civilizations were for the agenda of those civilizations. The stargates that have been built by the current powers on the Earth, the Illuminati, have an agenda of control from this point on the Earth to